podcast you cheer for. Sneaker business talk. It's the Soul Material Podcast. All right, it's the Soul Material Podcast. T-Mark the Street Shark. We're in here.
And your man, the OGEO. Welcome.
All right, now we're here live and direct. So thanks for all of us, our podcast listeners, because now you get to see us on YouTube as well. So we're just going to keep plugging that, letting you know you can see us on all of our platforms. But here, we're the podcast you cheer for. So Soul Material.
We're Sneaker here. Business talk. Let's do it.
There you go. Clarity over popularity. So we're going to get into some clarity right now because there's a lot going on in the sneaker business, especially with headline news crossing over in so many different categories. This is something that's happening right now, but actually behind the scenes, there's a lot of similar activity in the marketplace that's led us up here. And we've actually touched on some of those things in previous episodes. So it's going to tie all that back together. So OG, just give them the baseline of like what's happening first, and then we're going to peel back the layers. What's been going on with Kanye West,
formerly known as Kanye West?
Yes.
Legally.
So many different names. But yes, what's going on?
So much involved. But we're going to keep it basic, pure, and hit you with some terminology, and educate you on some things that I think that social media and news overall may be missing the point, or may be missing it intentionally because they don't want you to be educated. But we're going to really tackle what Ye is doing, not necessarily why he's doing it or his motivation or his motives, but just on the business side of things. Maybe some things that he may be totally unaware of, maybe he is unaware of, and maybe ignorant to it and don't care. But just the overall impact of the community as far as sneakers, as far as consumers, about how this is going to go, about who owns what, and so forth, and how these things that are going on that he may be saying or doing, there's certain terms that are not being vocalized at all, and I've been following this thing for the past few weeks very intentfully, and we're going to educate you because, again, like Tony just said, man, the shark with clarity over popularity. So let's get it. So we're going to dig into a few other things outside of what a lot of the sneaker blogs and the news and a lot of these media outlets are tackling. It seems to be the same thing over and over and over again.
All right. So here we go. Sneaker business talk. So let's talk about Adidas. Adidas is saying now that they're cutting ties with Ye, and they're not going to pay him anymore. They're stopping the production. So now business talk. What happens next? What happens to the product? There are a lot of things that were already in production. So now that comes to a screeching halt. They said, Adidas, you've been a little tardy to the party for a few of these social justice things, but now in this case, this is where you say the buck stops here, and we just want to cut ties. Okay, great, but we want to make sure. I just want to introduce our audience to the concept called virtue signaling, because it's in the diversity, equity, inclusion space. I know a lot of that. There's a lot of buzzwords that go on in that area, but in a nutshell, especially when a company is doing it, they're trying to shout as loud as they can to say we're virtuous, we stand up for these causes, but there's a lot of emptiness on the inside. So and it's really to the root of the issue, because a lot of things have been happening, but you didn't cut ties with them until now. So what makes now different from the other things that's going on as it aligns to your virtues? All right, because that just says that you may have been acceptable about other things and other people that still in the category of hate, but when it gets to a certain category, says, okay, everything, enough is enough. All right. It may not even have to do with those groups or anything. It could have been time. It could have been timing. It's actually
the consistency of the same thing.
Exactly. All of those things. So when we're talking about virtue signaling, we just want to make sure that there's accountability from the public. So that's why you have to educate yourself instead of just reading all the headlines, just understand what's happening. All right. So one of the other things that's happening is that they're also saying because they're not saying exactly what's next. So here's a couple scenarios that could play out where they could actually still produce the product. You know why? Because they are also letting it be known that they own the intellectual property.
Boom,
All right.
boom.
So when it comes to intellectual property, it's just Yeezy brand on top of the shoe. So that's kind of where it ends with Kanye, is that you just can't call it Yeezy. So then otherwise it'd be, infringement. So the Adidas has the right to just rebrand, put out the same product, and then just change the name. Now back to
It's already in production, like you said.
Exactly. So you're talking about how much money you're going to lose by not, in the profits, but or the revenue share. But what about, cost of production and everything else in between, labor, everything else. We already talked about in the global supply chain episodes about, how much money is really being spent just to ship your product, just to create it and ship it around the world. So
put a pin in that, Tony, because what's interesting what you just said is how many companies or corporations really were integral enough to where ethics took over the bottom line. Very, very few times in the history I've been living for 42 years. So bottom line is still there. They're going to find a way to not lose any money on what's either already been produced or being producing.
Well, and again, so just remember what got us here, right? Because we can have nice intent and all that good stuff, but what's really happening? Because how much are you willing to lose at this point? When you say you're cutting ties, are you really going to rebrand it? Because, we know a little better, because especially the Yeezy collections are so unique in those designs. I don't care if you own them or not. We know who it is. We know where they came from. So if you just change the name, and you go from blue magic to red magic, it's not going to work. It's not the same. You can't cut it. You know what I mean? So with that, you want to make sure that as a consumer, now what? Who really stands for what, right? Because you're the one that's going to buy and feed into this process. So are you going to stand up for the same cause and not buy anything else? And also, where else can you sell these? Those third party bugs, the Rosses and the Marshalls and the Burlingtons, TJ Maxxes. We already told you some stories about how that pandemic has messed up that cycle, and there's things that you're just not going to see ever again. So do those stores even want to buy those either? Because they want to disassociate with themselves with that. So there's so many layers. These things could just get recycled and sit in a landfill for all we know. I'm sure that they would try to liquidate as much as possible and outlets and everything like that. But what is the aftermarket going to look like? So speaking of the aftermarket, now let's talk about one more brand, Foot Locker, because you're a retailer. You also came out and said
immediately, almost like it was a news flash. Like, really? Like, Foot Locker saying something? What are you saying?
So Foot Locker, you're going to stand up and say,
we're pulling Yeezys off the shelves.
I would like to have seen them on the shelves first.
Facts.
And then you can pull them, because where were they on the shelves other than, some, tier 0 release and one major market for a weekend.
Some one return.
Yeah, you're not going to see it on the shelf, right? So that's a nice gesture, but consumers, educate yourself. Is this virtue signaling? Like, just care more. Care more about how things are playing out, because that's why the companies operate the way that they do. Is because they see what you're willing to do and not say and stand up for. So they're actually a mirror. The companies are a mirror also of the consumer marketplace and how you react. So it's your virtues mirroring each other when you don't really stand up for anything. So, but that third party, for the concept of sneaker business talk, who did we also talk about in previous episode? What else has Foot Locker invested in?
GOAT.
The GOAT. All right. So now the aftermarket, they own it. So yeah, take it off the shelves. We're going to make more money when you sell it on the app anyway.
And it's key thing you said, Tony, when we talked about this previously in private, is that for Foot Locker to be so virtuoso, as you just mentioned, why aren't they getting pulled off a GOAT? So it reminds me of when Nike decided because what was going on with Kobe, they literally were really intentful as far as taking everything Kobe related off RIP when he passed away. And I just found it very interesting that with all of the shouting and screaming that's going on online right now, consistently every day is something about Ye. There wasn't enough sneaker blogs, even the big ones with millions of followers that mention that, hey, feel like you own GOAT too. And I don't see not one Yeezy taken off of GOAT at all. So, or you invest enough in GOAT to where you do own it. I mean, let's call it what it is. And outside of Wall Street Journal, and I believe it was another big article about it when it happened a few years ago, no one's talked about that. It's almost like it's an afterthought now that the man has invested in being the dealer, has invested in the product as well. So he's selling it both ways.
It is an afterthought because just think about this. Like a couple of blogs have tried to mention it and just talk about aftermarket sales, but it wasn't a direct tie. It wasn't educational. But
we know why.
But look at Instagram posts, what gets pinned and what doesn't. Right. The Ye post gets pinned, but then the business side it might be a post, but it's not pinned. It's not there for you to, it's not regurgitated on your timeline again, because they're not trying to feed you that. It's just some people are doing it just to do it. I get it. But again, that's why we're clarity over popularity over here, because we're here to inform you and let you know. Again, you already know, especially our core audience who's already been listening. You already know we've told you these things. Now we're just sewing this thread together and saying, look what had time and timing the circumstances have done, because what this has happened, similar things have actually happened with Ye or anybody else. You've been in similar situations, but we're at peak timing of some consciousness, and this level of power of accountability, like let's still not ignore what's happening and saying, like, how can we use these things for the greater good in the end? Because like we do need these type of shifts when they're applicable to the situation. This situation is just, I feel like it's just gotten way overblown. And people might be making an example out of Kanye because of who he is, but that's still no defense, because he said so many other things, and that's where my problem is that he said so many other things that I just don't agree with, and we're not here. We didn't get here until he said something else, but he didn't even go as far in the other comments than he did with everything else. So it's just like, what does everyone really care about? Again, and that's why, I just call to action to this virtual signaling, like what is, I question everybody, as far as, this isn't an either or, you're on one side or another, we're also in polarizing times as well. So just want to be mindful of, how you navigate through these type of conversations, because it does get politicized. That's why it's clickbait. And that's why, we're trying to do what we do, so that it's clarity. There's many levels to this, and there's a lot of business at hand, right? So, but as the consumer, we are trying to educate you on how much power you have in the marketplace to continue these trends. So, are you going to be spending the money on the aftermarket just because you want some Yeezys? Or the prices are they going to go up or down? What's going on? He has other collections as well, because many other brands are dropping them too, with the Gap and Balenciaga and everything else in between.
And not only that, Tony, but what's interesting to me in this country, one, we are a very forgiving country. On the other hand, being American, we also have a tendency over time to fade off into the sunset and forgot what was important. And I'm intrigued to see the next few weeks, few months, how all this is going to go, because I hate to say it, but there may be potential of forgiveness being there, time going past, Kanye all of a sudden having, I guess, this green light moment, and then he signed back. I mean, it happens. It could be a redeemed. I'm not sure how this is going to go. And for us being sneakerheads, consumers, and so forth, I'm gonna see how righteous people are 3 months from now about his shoes or his products or so forth, or it's going to be like, I'm still wearing my Yeezys, but that was him at that time. Like, I'm just going to see how this goes, because right now, as you said, everyone now is I think for the most
I
part,
mean, we've
making a
already been through these episodes where people burn their Yeezys, said they didn't want to be involved with them, and then they still find a way to whenever the next thing is coming. You know, word on the street, you know, they was reporting that he just rolled up into Skechers offices, trying to, you know, have unsolicited meetings. You know, we also know who else has Skechers deals, right? You know, that's was already in that Kardashian clan. You know what I mean? So, you know, at the end of the day, I think he should just do his own thing for real. Like Sway told him a long time ago when you said he didn't have the answers. Do it yourself, and you wouldn't even have to worry about getting dropped and all this other stuff, because you could do whatever you wanted to do. But you gotta have, even I don't care if you was a billionaire or not, the infrastructure you have to have in order to build all that stuff out. That's why Adidas can own so much, because they have the infrastructure for the tooling and the technology and all of that other stuff. And you had to start from scratch to get that together, let alone distribution and everything else in between. So, but if you're a visionary like that, then let's do it. So, but will people accept you? That's another thing. So you might want to just fade to the background. You can still do stuff. Just don't tell everybody it's you, because that's going to affect your brand, anything you do in business moving forward. But I think people are going to love him and hate him either way.
Understood. And love or hate, attention. And as the saying goes, unfortunately, with some situations, all attention is good attention. And I think that's what this is going to boil down to. And I don't see, with the attention that he's getting, the popularity of his products as a whole, because it's a universal product. It really is. I
mean, there's just this social responsibility that comes with it. Just gotta be careful. But I'm actually not for Adidas just rebranding stuff. You kind of already do that right now. Like you're releasing Kobe shoes,
there you go,
and you're imaging it as if it's homage. But I hope you had a conversation with the Bryant family or something, because that could be virtual signaling too. It's just like, yeah, R.I.P. Kobe, but while everyone's thinking about it, we're gonna release his old shoes when he had a different contract. You know what I mean? Like are you helping out with any causes or anything like that? Like, I don't know contractually how much you can publicize because of the Nike deal, but at the end of the day, just be cautious and conscious of what's really happening. Because some of these we've told you before, just as far as how advertising and marketing, they're just pushing buttons so that you can feel emotions on demand. And get triggered to
spend that money,
consume products and lifestyles that they're selling to you. So clarity over popularity.
Indeed.
There you go. All right. So
Sneaker Business Talk 101.
Yes. So, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to keep just getting to the point, let you know what the facts are, peel back the layers, and then, just drop some more episodes just about that sneaker business talk. So Soul Material Podcast, get you the fast break, action, and then slam dunk it home with the assist from, the Shark to the OG. So there you go. That's some of the news. But it's ongoing. We've told you this is more of an update of where we've left off in the conversation. So, any last words for the OG?
Not at all. I just don't find it a coincidence that we kind of built the foundation of this, just talking just in general, just about facts, basic terms, and so forth. And now we're here with everything that we discussed when we first started off in season 1 and season 2, and how things are manifesting. I don't find a coincidence at all, man. So I'm glad I teamed up with you. I'm glad that we have a platform with the advancement of technology that we can actually have this out, because the terms that you've used, again, unless you Google them yourself, I have not heard anyone mention what you said related to this topic at all. And that's why we're here. So, hey, this is why we're here. The podcast Cheerful, baby.
There you go. T-Mart the Street Shark signing off. Soul Material.
And the OGEO. Till next time. Peace to you.
Peace.